with this session. So for a long time, the discussion was climate now and climate tomorrow and nature later when we have time for that. But the reality is that it's part of the same planetary crisis, right? It's not something we can separate. But I think for the benefit of our discussions in this small group now, I would love to see by a show of hands who considers themselves a nature expert, knows, you know, all the abbreviations we love to use and all the work. Nobody? I think I consider myself a nature expert. But two, okay. Who says, I have a bit of knowledge on nature and we as an organization are starting to take action on this topic, but I want to learn more. Great, so I think I have a few more hands on that. Actually, I would say it's 75%, if not more. And then I think for the remainder of the people, I'm expecting that they say, gosh, you know, nature, it's a new topic for me, enlighten me. Or is there anyone in the room who feels like this is something completely new? Oh, that's also a relief to see. So I think most of us feel confident on the nature topic, which is great, because for this session, we're going to do a deep dive, and I'll introduce my speakers to you in a bit, but also the session program. At COP16 in Cali, we launched a publication, Nature in the Boardroom. And the reason we published this together with Deloitte, who's been an amazing partner supporting us, has been twofold. So if you look at real economy companies, you see that about 85% of them are highly dependent on nature, and I would argue with FIs that that's the same, maybe not directly, but definitely indirectly. But only 2% of boards have knowledge and capacity on nature. So there's a massive implementation gap. The second reason why we published this publication was the fact that we work with our members on nature topics. And the main reason why people don't get approval to join, for example, the Nature Positive Insurance Working Group that Yara just spoke about, is because they don't get board level buy-in. There's still many of our members, with board members, that are uncertain about this topic. So part of the reason why we published Nature in the Boardroom was really to say, you know, we need to create more understanding so that there can also be more action on nature. And the publication is downloadable via our website, but what I like about it is that it includes a blueprint with types of questions you should ask yourself if you're a CSO, CEO, Chief Risk Officer. So I think it's a very practical publication. So what we'll do, we're the last session of the day. I'll sit down in a minute with Boitumelo for a quick fireside chat. And if you allow, I suggest we're not sitting there, but we'll just stay here so we're close to the attendees. Then we'll go to Ziad, who give an excellent explanation on what's in the publication. And if you're interested in the publication, we also created an amazing video series. They're about 45 minutes in total. So if you or your boss's boss needs to build their capacity on this topic, watch the video series. But Ziad will do a 10-minute rundown, and then you'll be put to work, because this is a workshop. So I hope you'll enjoy, and then we'll break at about 18:20 for, I think, a very well-deserved break before we resume again tomorrow. So I'll get one more mic. So I think the first question I'd love to ask you, Standard Bank has been a leader on various sustainability topics globally, but also in Africa. Could you explain to us how you have been building the expertise of the bank on nature-related topics, and then in particular on how have you trained your board-level executives on this topic?
Thanks, Romie. Like your style, for us to sit a bit more informally. Before I answer your question directly, just for anyone in the room who's not familiar with the Standard Bank Group, we are an Africa-focused financial institution. We are in 20 countries across the continent. We are fully committed and invested on the continent and have been so, and we believe in a very pragmatic approach to driving sustainability. At the center, we always say that Africa is our home, we drive our growth, and we are focused across various client segments. We have CIB, business and commercial clients, our private and personal banking clients, and also insurance and asset management. And so I think, and I know we are going to be focused on nature, but I think there's a lot that I'll say that has parallels to climate. And I think the reason for that is what we've really tried to do as we embark on this, and very much sitting in the second kind of group where we have an idea, but we're still very much trying to build our knowledge, our capacity and integration. And I think what we've really tried to do is that when we are talking about nature, we are trying to say to the organization, to the leaders, to the board, it's the next phase. Because I think often what happens is that we can create a bit of noise in an organization. We create a bit of confusion because some of us are familiar with the topics a lot more than others, so it becomes a bit of a challenge. So I'd say definitely in the journey that we've taken, we're looking at building capacity. It's about collaboration and integration. And what we have really seen is that in our annual materiality process, we do this process, we want to understand really what is important. And nature is really rearing its head. And I think this has been very important because it shows that there is awareness amongst our various stakeholder groupings. And I will say from our board as well, we get asked, our board is very in touch with the issues in a way of kind of questioning us, guys, what are we thinking about this and what we've been doing? I think the other critical part of building this capacity is that we have partnered with a business school, the Gordon Institute of Business, and they're based in Gauteng in South Africa, and we are taking the board through a year-long program. And one of the key modules is on understanding nature. And I think what's going to be important for this is for us to be specific. So I think that's also where we sometimes lose others in the boardroom as we speak about nature, and everyone is like, what is that? And I think when we speak about it, we look at sectors like agriculture. And this has been clearly brought out through the Encore pilot that we went through with the South African Reserve Bank, and we focused on looking at our agriculture portfolio and to really see where the risks sit within that. And we found there were a sort of 6 ecosystems that were quite considered high risk and dependent. And so I think it's really about trying to make it the next bit of the journey and understanding that it is a journey, but also trying to be specific.
Excellent, thank you so much. I think a few things to pick up from that would be nature as an extension, partly of your climate journey, and I think that's excellent. I think what we often say, avoid coming with new topics to your board and saying, because it might be nature today, but it could be a new topic, like pollution tomorrow, so it's better to make it part of a bigger narrative. I think something I've seen in my engagement with board level in some of the trainings we've provided is often you come into a room and people think, oh, nature, this is about all your fuzzy animals. But it's not, and at some point it kind of clicks in their head that this is actually, something which is a material risk to them. So, and then it really starts moving. So you spoke about capacity building. How are you integrating this in your decision making today, but also in your long-term value creation tomorrow?
Yeah. So again, with the next phase. So we have existing policies, we have existing tools, and what we have sought to do is to integrate nature considerations into those. So, we have an environmental and social policy, we have a standard, we have our ESMS, and in this last year we went through, particularly with climate, nature, and also topics related to social risk and human rights, to say, how do we actually look at these policies and integrate this clearly? And that comes in front of the board. They have sight of that. They review, they approve these policies. So to bring that level of awareness to how we consider this in our transactions, and how we consider this in terms of the clients that we're engaging with. So I think that's been quite an important aspect of that. From a more forward-looking perspective, I think what's always easier, obviously, to have as a conversation with bankers is the risk. So we've started, it's a risk-based approach initially, but very much understanding that that's kind of the entry to the game. You need to manage this to be able to also realize the opportunity. And so already within our own existing sustainable finance framework, we identify very clear opportunities under green for eligible transactions, projects, etc. So I think thinking about that from a future kind of value creation perspective is how we do it. And again, it just speaks to the broader approach. So we very much, take this perspective that you manage the risk and you maximize the positive impact opportunity. And so using that is the framework for sustainability more broadly in the group, that's the framework we use for climate, and that's the framework we use for nature, and as you say, any future themes that come into it. So really trying to inject it into the board level agenda as well. I think we're quite fortunate that our social and ethics committee, our group risk committees consider these issues quite seriously and actually give us quite a good share of voice. So maybe 5 years ago, you kind of were waiting on, the last moment in the agenda, hoping that, they won't run out of time and rush you through it. That's evolved completely. I mean, we sit with the chairs of these committees, they ask us, what would you like to bring? And we express that, and they also question us about what they would like to see. So I think that's helping to connect it to strategy, to governance and oversight.
Excellent. I think it's a great answer, and also the risk focus, of course, makes a lot of sense. I think it's important to also see the opportunity in nature. The WEF has estimated 400 million jobs, 10 trillion in additional revenue, and I think we need to keep in mind that Africa and Middle East are, very biodiverse parts of our world. Last night I was speaking to a colleague, and there's often so much focus on the Amazon basin globally, and we forget that there is also a Congo basin, right? So I think it's important to keep that in mind. We've been speaking a lot about the bank, a little bit how it operates in silo, but there is of course the wider environment. And this morning, I think in the opening sessions, Eric's and others spoke about, regulatory pressure. How do you see that in the region where you operate? Is that a driver for impact for your board as well?
So I think the regulatory kind of expectation is always a topic in the air, but I think practically we haven't really seen, I think the regulation still needs to catch up to a point where we're not just taking kind of voluntary action, right? But I mean, if I kind of take the sort of the lead from what the South African Reserve Bank has been doing along with the Prudential Authority to try and encourage us to look at our portfolios, it's a positive sign, but I think there will still be some time for us to get to it being a lot more concretized. And similarly, I mean, we saw the same thing with climate where, you know, we've had an exploratory stress test, and there's very clear that this is still in exploratory phase, and then we'll move from there. I think where the pressure really comes for us is from the broader range of stakeholders in our external universe who demand and expect better from us in terms of this. And I think another point of pressure is that given the strategy of the group and how we're really looking at investing in infrastructure and energy across the continent, we can't be falling behind on ensuring that we understand the risks that these projects will place on nature, on biodiversity. So I think more so than anything, the pressure we experience is from these other external stakeholders who rightfully so demand a lot from us.
Excellent, thank you so much. I think we're already getting to the end of this very quick introduction, and I'd love to talk longer with you, but I just wanted to see if there's anyone in the audience who has a question for Boitumelo. I'm afraid I'm mispronouncing your name each time I do it, but I hope it's more or less okay. Is there a question for Boitumelo? Otherwise, I'll just suggest that we give a big applause, because I think this has been a great introduction to our session. And with that, I'll hand over to Ziad for the next component of the menu that we've created for you, which is an overview of the publication, and then it's over to you for a bit of work at the tables.
Presentation. Clicker.
Is there a clicker at the...
I should turn it on.
Can you go to the next slide? Next. Okay, next. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Ziad, Baddou, Director of Advisory in the Deloitte Morocco. And to start this presentation, I would like to remind that UNEP FI and partners believe that integrating nature consideration into their governance is critical for boards. So the objective of this publication is for board members to understand nature-related dependencies, impacts, risks, and opportunities, what we call DEROs, and incorporate this into their decision making. So our goal is to help the board understand their responsibilities and to discuss and act more frequently on nature-related issues. Next. So in this session, we will try to show the emerging trends and what motivates board members to act on the basis of climate and nature. So we speak about the regulatory trends, the legal and fiduciary duties, the financial risks, and the social and client expectations. We will also see how to drive action on nature perfection in organization. So we will focus on 3 topics: the governance and strategy, the risk management, and the portfolio management. So I will share with you some context and introduction for these 3 topics. So next slide, please. Next. Okay. So to introduce the context of ecosystem services, so we can say that the services offered by ecosystems are crucial for human survival, and they provide various benefits, including nutritious food, clean water, disease and climate regulation. So these resources had an approximate value of $125 trillion and are often overlooked in political and economic policies. So in this ecosystem services, we have the provisioning services like food, raw materials, fresh water, and medicinal resources. We have the supporting services to preserve habitats for plants and animals and maintain the genetic diversity. Also, ecosystems offer regulating services to preserve air and soil quality and managing floods. And when these services are impaired, the consequences can be severe and the process of restoration can be challenging and very, very costly. So finally, ecosystems provide intangible benefits known as cultural services like recreation, mental and physical health, or tourism, or also spiritual experience. Next. So today, the world is living a triple planetary crisis. The first crisis related to the climate, who drives biodiversity loss and increases pollution impacts. And this climate change can exacerbate natural ecosystem imbalances. The second is the nature crisis that reduces ecosystem resilience and exacerbates climate change and pollution effects. So this is caused by mainly 2 other crises: the overexploitation of resources and the change in land use. And the third crisis is about pollution, who contribute to climate change and biodiversity loss, disrupting the ecosystems. So taking into account this crisis, financial institutions face environmental challenges that affect asset value, risk, and liabilities. So that's it for the introduction, maybe in the context. We can go to the next slide. Okay. So the link between the finance and nature, we see 4 key emerging trends. So first, we know that guidelines and frameworks are evolving, and institutions like CSRD or ESRS highlight the importance of addressing biodiversity and ecosystems in sustainability reporting. Second, accountability for neglecting the integration of nature-related risk is constantly evolving. So directors could face legal consequences for non-compliance with nature-related risks. And third, nature-related risks are becoming major sources of disruption for financial markets. So they can impact financial institutions, investment portfolios, supply chains, and lending practices. And finally, we can see that stakeholders and clients are more and more concerned with nature and biodiversity. So boards must have sufficient attention to nature to avoid reputational risk, for example. So now we are going to the first topic, the governance and strategy. Next slide. So to manage nature-related risks and opportunities, it's necessary to build a strong governance framework and integrate nature into the global strategy of the organizations. So in recent years, many global organizations like Deloitte, BCG, McKinsey have been warning of the importance of integrating climate and nature into their strategy, as well as managing, for example, technological progress, for example. So this change is due to the growing recognition that nature and climate risks are a major threat to financial stability. So we see that many leaders and Conseil members are beginning to express their concerns about climate and nature in meetings or in written communications. Next. Also, making a multi-year roadmap is essential for organizations, and there are 5 points of interest for boards. First, invest in a comprehensive introduction to nature to better define its needs and objectives, and assess long-term environmental benefits versus immediate business outcomes. Second, build skilled roots target training programs, and it's very necessary to appoint a member of the board to oversee climate and the nature training and actions. Third, develop a deeper understanding of nature than climate, and create interdisciplinary teams to respond to climate and nature issues and adapt their training. And finally, put nature on the board agenda to discuss nature-related processes more frequently and keep abreast at the latest development and challenges and regulations. Next slide. So the climate and nature roadmap must be part of a comprehensive strategy. So when you have a nature roadmap, it can facilitate the allocation of resources required to manage dependencies, impact, risk, opportunities, what we call DEROs. You can facilitate the responsibility of an internal resource with the concrete understanding of the DEROs and the integration of topics related to the nature in decision-making bodies. To get this objective, a cross-departmental collaboration and the quarterly meeting are required, and the appointment of a nature representative to the board is necessary to ensure that nature-related risks are not overlooked. And finally, you can link the bonus of leaders to nature goals that have been defined on the roadmap. Next slide. Now we are going to the second chapter. So the risk, we spoke about the governance and the strategy, and now we are going to the risk management. So for financial institutions, nature-related risk must be integrated into the risk management policy. So regulators stress the need for financial institutions to identify and manage risk related to the nature. It has been demonstrated that integrating nature into risk management and financial analysis improves long-term financial performance. And climate and environmental considerations must be part of an institution's overall strategy and risk framework. The board should oversee the processes of nature-related risk. In the same way, financial institutions need to understand the nature-related dependency, the GEROs, of their clients along the value chain. And finally, to start the work from now, the TNFD has developed a framework and provides a high-level methodology for nature risk assessment. And they have published a lot of case studies and assessment that can help your organization to a rapid implementation. Financial institutions can integrate nature-related risk into the overall risk policy in 4 steps. So, step 1, financial institutions must assess the efforts required to define the scope of work to be carried out. Step 2, they must identify sources of exposure to client and dependencies in order to assess potential financial risk. And step 3, they need to assess how nature-related risks can be translated into traditional financial risk categories like the credit risk or the market risk. And finally, step 4, financial institutions should also explore opportunities arising from their engagement with natural capital to improve their market positioning. So now we are going to the third topic. The portfolio management. We consider that there are 6 portfolio drivers. Portfolios must be managed in accordance with the financial institution sustainability strategy and natural transition plan. It is also crucial to understand market trends and be able to adapt quickly to sustainability market trends. Financial institutions can also improve their long-term performance by managing nature risks, and they may turn into financial risk. Nature and climate-related objectives, strategy and transition plan also need to be aligned. And financial institutions are encouraged to engage in nature-positive initiatives to align their portfolios and contribute to broader major goals. And it's also essential to follow regulatory frameworks to comply with the laws and avoid legal sanctions. And to finish, we can give you 5 examples of how to manage your portfolio and what you can do from now in your organization. So 1, you're encouraging clients to adopt low emission technologies by financing value chain transformation. Help transform larger systems in which your customer operates. 3, supporting global progress against climate change and nature loss by sharing their data and research on environmental risk. You can also promote sustainable product design for financial institutions and promote claims management for insurers. Design products that encourage environmentally friendly practices. And finally, financial institutions can support their clients by participating in conservation and restoration initiatives that protect and restore ecosystems and habitats. Thank you.
We're not such a big group, but I think the microphone still helps because I don't have a particularly loud voice. So I think this has been a whistle-stop tour through our report. If you want to know more, please read it. There's also a part on disclosure and regulatory expectations. So I hope you've paid attention to my interview of Boitumelo because we kind of discussed the same topics as well, and I realized that it's the end of a long day, but I do want to take about 15 more minutes of your time to have some group discussions on what you are doing on this topic as an organization. I think we're not a big group, so I suggest if you're on a table by yourself, join one of the other tables so we have a bit more of a rich discussion. My first question to you is a very simple one. You should be able to answer. Who are you? Where do you work? I think the second one already becomes a little bit more complex. We've been talking about including nature in board level, both on capacity building, but also on expectations. People always run away when they get an assignment, but that's fine. You can join another group. Then what are the gaps in that? Because I'm sure nature is a new topic, so many of us are still learning and adding. And then as a last question, who are your internal champions on this topic? And Ziad and I will be walking around to support you. So the lady in the lovely green, maybe you can also join this table. And I'll give you a few minutes and I'll walk around. So I am glad to hear that you enjoyed this session. I want to thank Boitumelo once more and Ziad for their great presentations. If you're interested in the topic, approach me tomorrow. I want to thank you for your attention. Big applause. Thanks so much. Big applause.